my feel-good breakfast show.
Yes, Mzansi, welcome back. It's your Feel Good Breakfast Show, and what an incredible show we've already had, talking about so much importance when it comes to our mental health. Now, here's a reminder for you. It's okay not to be okay. And strength is sometimes found in your ability to be vulnerable. Now, I know a lot of gents should pay attention to this right now, and those are two popular sayings at the moment. But what does applying them to our everyday experiences like financial difficulty and political turmoil actually look like? Well, we are excited to have media personality and alternative holistic health practitioner. We've got Zuraida Jardine in the building. She's here in studio. Let's give her a feel good welcome.
Thank you.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I must say, your energy is palpable. And if I was feeling in any way kind of like a semblance of mediocrity, lowness in terms of energy, you've just lifted me up.
Wow,
You're the kind of people that people need to hang around.
Oh, yeah. I think you kind of just did the same thing there. You fed it back to me because I'm feeling really good. Let's get into this conversation, because this is something I feel is so real, Zuraida. We've talked about well-being. We're talking about mental health, but we don't talk about the constant negative external pressures like our finance, right?
Yeah.
So when we're in that hole, when we're in that rut, how do we begin to tell ourselves that, listen, Paul, it's okay. You're good. Like, you're going to be okay. You're going to get through this. How do we bring that positive narrative in?
What a lovely question. Well, first of all, I think it's important to acknowledge that money makes life easier, doesn't it?
I think it does. I think we need to start acknowledging that.
Yes.
It definitely does help.
Money makes life easier. However, one's bank balance cannot correlate to how you value yourself in life, right? So who I am and how I show up is not correlated to my bank balance at a time.
I'm not determined by that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if anything, I think this pandemic has shown that so many people didn't save for what we didn't see coming. So in essence, I think what has happened has been so healthy for so many of us, because it's allowed us to consolidate our finances, to realize that perhaps we're spending money on things that we want as opposed to things that we need. What I've also found with this time and people going through financial upheaval is that you're recognizing that you are so much more than your finances. And not having finances will steer you in a different direction. You'll find that you'll become more creative. You'll start looking for other avenues in life that you can actually rise from. So in essence, it's a good thing. However, having said all of that, it is so important to acknowledge the anxiety and the fear around not having money, because it's completely overwhelming. And of course, what's anxiety? Anxiety is the fear of the unknown, right?
Yeah.
So when you have no money, it feels like you're never going to have any money. What you need to realize is that when we look back in time, this will be a sentence in your life. It won't be your life sentence. So what's going to happen? This will pass. This time will pass. Recognize where you are, but know that it will pass.
Okay. And I like what you mentioned there, because I would imagine the first step to all of this is to feel, right?
Yeah.
And to experience and go through that emotion, because like you mentioned, and like we're talking about, it's okay to have that emotion.
Yeah.
It's real. It's something that almost becomes like a driving force for us, potentially. Yeah. When is it a good time to necessarily say to yourself, okay, I've dealt with this emotion. It's come in the form of pain. It's come in the form of forcing me to look at another opportunity. Like you mentioned, we all went through this. We had to get creative. When do we let go of that emotion and say to ourselves, okay, it's time to move on? When is that sort of mourning period enough?
Yeah. So first of all, awareness is so important, right? If you don't have awareness, you don't recognize any of those feelings. Yeah, exactly. So first of all, you know that what you're feeling is okay. Secondly, you've got to be able to ascertain if the feeling is overwhelming to a point where your life is becoming completely dysfunctional. That's when you need to start seeking alternative professional help. And you just did a segment earlier on when it comes to that. Yeah. You've got to get professional help. If finances are a strain and you can't get a professional health professional at the time, like a therapist, for example, then SADAC is available. We've got Lifeline that's available. There are counselors there for you to go and speak to. I read a study recently that was done by the University of California that said that emotional support and resilience are paramount to getting you through financial constraints. So when you are in that position, if you do have an emotional structure, support structure, tap into them, allow them into your life, and hang out with the positive people because they will aid you in building up that resilience.
I love that. Taking my notes down, implementing. And this conversation is not stopping. Mzansi, this is something incredible. This is something that I think we are all dealing with right now. But as you heard, the first and most important step, acknowledge your feelings. Really engage with those feelings and pay attention to it, because I think this is the first thing to creating and heightening your awareness. And as you've just heard, we're going to continue with this conversation and dive into more of what it means to really unlock your mind and find that positive spin on what's happening in the chaotic world that we all live in. We'll see you after this.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
You can see the glow in my eyes as we reconnect with someone who is very special in my own path through this industry. We are continuing our conversation around mental well-being in today's chaos with media personality and alternative holistic health practitioner, Zuraida Jardine. Earlier, we discussed keeping mentally healthy amidst financial insecurity, which I think we've all had a taste of on various levels. We're now looking at taking care of your well-being amidst political turmoil. See, it feels like, first of all, it's so good to see you.
I know,
It really is so special. And I'll touch on a moment that I had with you early on in my, probably both of our careers just now. But I've got to ask, because we exist in a space where you almost have to plug into the chaos.
Yeah.
I need to ask critical questions about what's going on when it comes to load shedding, when it comes to these polarities that we're seeing within the political construct. It is very difficult for me not to take it on board and for that to inform the rest of my day. We need to know the stuff, but it's hurting us when we know it. As someone who is living in the space, trying to process, how do you go through one day of dealing with South African newspapers?
So, yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, first of all, let me start with know thyself. So, if I take myself, for example, I am an empath.
Yeah.
So if I read a story that is heartbreaking, it sits with me and I find it really hard to shake. So know thyself. Start there. So what I would do, because we are in a landscape of insurmountable amounts of chaos at the moment, not only in South Africa, but globally. So if you're someone that likes to check in with the news, and I think it's important that we check in with the news, maybe start curating how often you do that. So perhaps you check the news every Friday.
And where you get your news
Exactly. It's got to be reliable sources. Maybe you check your news every Friday and you look at the week that was, okay? If you're the kind of person like I am where things stay with you. Or you start, the wonderful thing about where we're living in today's day and age is that we're able to curate what we hear, we're able to curate what we see. So become deliberately selective about the news sources that you look at. If you are looking at news sources and they tell you about what's happening in the world globally and in South Africa, you've got to balance that with positive content as well.
For sure.
Because if you don't do that, you're going to find yourself in a really negative space and spiral that goes down all the time.
And unfortunately, the system supports that. So we've got a system that creates a vacuum for negative news that gets filled as a mechanism for selling papers, for clickbait, for driving this news out there within these spaces as an algorithm. But you're absolutely right. We do have control within that. We can curate what and how we see it. That being said, everything moves. I was joking about saying that being said so many times on the show, but we've reached this point where you are constantly assessing, you're elastic, you're evolving as you take this information on. I almost hyphenate the word challenge and solution now, because that's where we're at. And despite the craziness and the chaos, I'm feeling more positive now than I ever have. There is almost a counterbalance to all the negativity. Do you think this is the opportunity the purpose-driven people, the people who have made this their life calling, have been waiting for? How does a purpose-driven life now respond to these challenges?
Beautiful question. There's no doubt that you're doing what you do for a reason. Wow, beautiful question. Absolutely, Graham. You know, I feel, so I coined a term not too long ago called LAD, which is load shedding affective disorder. And I took it from the word SAD, which is seasonal affective disorder, which is what people who live, you know, overseas in really cold climates suffer when they go through really cold winters. And what happens is that you start getting psychological symptoms like depression, anxiety, mood swings, oversleeping, not sleeping enough, and the very same thing is happening to us in South Africa at the moment, isn't it? I mean, you speak to people about load shedding, those that are not privileged enough to have inverters and solars, and they're going through real depression. And then you also find yourself comparing yourself to the people you do know that have generators or have inverters.
Defunct. How come I can't live? Yeah.
So all of that impacts our sense of well-being. And with me being an empath, that happened to me too last year. So what I had to do was I had to distance myself from all of that, change perspective, which is what you're talking about. You change your perspective and you start looking at life through a different lens, because the reality is that the grass isn't green on the other side. The grass is green where you water it, okay? So what I do when I find myself in that situation where I know that it's important to hone into purpose, I ask myself, what else is the rest of the world going through that I'm not going through right now? And what you'll find 9 out of 10 times is that we're actually okay.
Yeah.
We're actually okay. So find ways that you can build resilience, that you can build tolerance and adaptability. If you find that you can be adaptable in today's time, there is nothing in the world that you won't be able to get through.
Yeah. And I've noticed in our job that does connect all these different industries, this nexus, our time has come. The purpose-driven have been pushed to the front of the queue. I absolutely love that. It often starts with a practical step, just like breathing. So we're going to look at how you can foster positive energy, not tomorrow, not when you reach the top of the mountain, with your next breath. Stick around.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. We are savoring every second of today's show. Why? Because we are back with one of our most beloved media personalities, who is now an alternative holistic health practitioner. She is living this truth. Zuraida Jardine. And this time we're going to discuss and address, if we can, some of the complexities of the real world. Because the world's gotten very real. And for all of us, it was this individual narrative where all of us were going through these crazy things, and then we went through one doorway together, which was COVID. Everyone had to walk through that doorway, and suddenly it's a different world. Emotion means more. We're more empathetic. The world is far more complex, far more polarized. For those of our industry, we've got to live that every day. Yeah. It's a real connection. But I want to put it to you. I said that there was an opportunity, or asked if there was an opportunity for solutions.
Yeah.
When we look at the current state of being now, how do we put ourselves in not a past-based, judgment-based state of mind, a fear-based future state of mind, but an in-the-moment, listening, living, breathing that truth right now? Because that speaks to adaptability and flexibility to me. How do we live in the moment?
Compassion. Compassion, Graham. I mean, I think there's so much beauty to have come out of this time. It has made us reflect. It has made us repurpose so much in our lives. I know for me personally, you know, my family went through a tough time of losing so many people to the COVID pandemic, but there's so much light and brightness that has come out of it. And I wouldn't change it for anything in the world, because the fabric of my being has changed, and the fabric of how I see others has changed. And I say the word compassion because it's so important. It's so important that we begin to look at the world and people. And I love this phrase in psychology. It's called unconditional positive regard. Do you know what that means?
I think I love that unconditionally.
Okay, so unconditional positive regard is when you look at what's happening in the world and you look at people with no judgment, 100% regard and empathy for who they are and what they're going through.
It doesn't speak, because this is, again, I want to attach my bias. I want to add a judgment to that, and this is not that. It's not forgiving a person. It's got absolutely nothing to do with them. It's about you.
Exactly.
And your state of being in the moment.
For sure.
How do you foster that? How do you wake up and grow that feeling?
By deciding how you want to feel. If I, for example, go into the world with hatred, then I'm drinking my poison
The
and
world will
I'm
confirm that
expecting
very
someone
quickly.
else to die. That's not going to happen. So it really starts and ends with you. You've used this word quite a few times in the segment of the show, which is going within.
Yeah.
Going in. It starts with us. It starts with how you show up in the world. And for me, a lot of that is about the pillars of health. And the pillars of health is the things that we didn't realize were as important as we realize today.
They are fundamental.
They are fundamental. It's food. What are the foods that you're eating? You know, if you don't make food your medicine, medicine's going to become your food. It's your movement. Movement contributes to your mood swings and the way you feel. Movement is responsible for those feel-good endorphins. It's your spirituality. What is your relationship with yourself and with your others? What are your outlets? Are you breathing? Are you mindful? Are you meditating? Are you praying? Whatever it is, are you going within? It's your environment. Your environment and who you hang out with is fundamental to how you show up in the world.
Your average, yeah.
Absolutely. Are the people you hanging out with, are they optimistic? Are they guiding you and assisting you to become more tolerant, to become more resilient? If not, then you've got to shift. You know, some people we inherit in our lives, like our family, but there are others that we can choose. So you have a choice all the time to choose how you're going to show up in your life. You've got to be an active participant, and that's the one thing that the pandemic has shown us, is that if you don't go through life actively, unfortunately, you're not going to feel good. Because at the end of the day, it's about how you feel. And how you feel is your responsibility. Because then I can go, okay, this person has made me feel this way, but I understand that their life perhaps intersects in a way that I can't quite comprehend.
Yeah.
So I may not agree with you, but I will listen to that with grace and I will move on.
I absolutely love that. And I mean, you've used the word judgment a few times, so maybe that's catching with me because it's something I'm struggling to let go of. But I can guarantee you right now, if there is a fear or a judgment involved, whether it's about yourself or about a situation or someone else, you're not in the moment. You are stuck standing still. Embrace yourself. I cannot believe how far you have come in this space, girl. Normally, I would just have a million questions to ask. Now, all I can do is try and process what you've said. This has been wonderful because it speaks to where you're at in your life, which is a very, very positive, wonderful thing, and it makes my heart explode. I love the fact that we have resources now available instantaneously online. You can drop a DM if someone inspires you, if someone can change your mindset, connect with them. But the bottom line is, you right now have to take responsibility yourself for how you feel. Feel leads to thought, leads to action, and you're in control. Zuraida, I love you, man.
Absolutely, thank you.